My husband thought his lawyer was there to deliver divorce papers and have me declared insane. He wanted to destroy me in front of everyone on that 60-story rooftop. I just smiled and let his own lawyer open the sealed envelope. 3 seconds later, his entire empire began to collapse, exactly as I had planned for the past 6 months. My name is Piper Morgan. Tonight, from 60 stories above the city of Bayford, I am watching my husband's world end. The air up here on the penthouse rooftop is thin and cold, smelling of champagne and exhaust. It's a fundraising gala, but the only thing being raised tonight is Grayson Hale's ego. This is his party, his triumph. His face plastered on the giant LED screens that usually show stock market data. The theme is the future of Bayford, and he is its self-appointed king. I am 32 years old, and for the last 5 of those, I have been his wife. Tonight, I am wearing a steel gray silk dress that Grayson's stylist picked out. It's beautiful, modest, and blends perfectly into the polished concrete and glass. I am a piece of the architecture, a decoration. That is my function. The crowd is a glittering swarm of the city's elite. Billionaires whisper to senators, influencers pout into their phones, and journalists circle like patient sharks. They all orbit Grayson. He stands near the edge, laughing, his hand resting possessively on the glass barrier as if he owns the view. He hasn't looked at me, not really, in over an hour. When he does, his eyes slide past, searching for someone more important, someone who isn't just the unstable wife he's been so careful to paint me as. The whispers have been circulating for months. Planted by his team, Piper is fragile. Piper is having a hard time. Piper, is not well. I am the designated casualty of his ambition. I see him before Grayson does. Roland Pierce, senior partner at Pierce, Maddox & Vale, moving through the party with the sleek, unhurried purpose of a predator. He wears a $3,000 suit like armor, and in his hand, he carries a thick manila envelope, sealed with a prominent red wax crest from the court. A few people notice him and fall silent, the gossip drying on their lips. This is it, the finale. Grayson turns, and a slow, cruel smile spreads across his perfect face. This is the moment he's been waiting for. This is the public execution. He gestures for Roland to join him at the center of the rooftop, near the microphone stand, effectively putting us on stage for the entire party. The live streams, the influencers' cameras, they all turn toward us. Roland stops a few feet from me. He doesn't acknowledge me, addressing only my husband. Mr. Hale. Roland, Grayson says, his voice booming with false magnanimity. He turns to me, but his eyes are for the crowd. Piper, my love. The endearment is a shard of glass. You and I have had our difficulties. I've tried to be patient. I've tried to get you help. He lets the words hang, letting everyone absorb the narrative he is the long-suffering husband, and I am the broken thing he must finally, regretfully, put aside. But I can't let your instability jeopardize the fund, he continues. Or my life. He nods to Roland. Mr. Pierce will handle the paperwork. It's all there. Just sign it, Piper, and get out of my life. The silence is absolute. This is the humiliation. Perfectly staged. He isn't just divorcing me. He's having me served like a summons in front of the 100 most powerful people in Bayford. They expect me to cry, to scream, to make a scene, to prove his unstable diagnosis correct. I take a slow breath, tasting the metallic chill in the air. I look at Grayson, at his handsome, triumphant face, and I feel nothing but a cold, clean calm. I do not reach for the envelope. If it's your petition, Grayson, I say, my voice surprisingly clear, carrying easily in the hush, then let your lawyer open it. Let him read it aloud, right here, in front of everyone. Grayson's smile tightens. Don't be difficult. Piper, just sign. I won't, I say, shaking my head slightly. I don't trust anything you hand me anymore. Not the coffee, not the pills, and certainly not this. I look directly at Roland Pierce, whose reptilian composure wavers for just a fraction of a second. Open it. Mr. Pierce, read what my husband wants the world to know. Roland looks at Grayson. A silent question. Grayson is annoyed. This is dragging out his victory lap. He gives a sharp, impatient nod. Fine, whatever. Read it. Roland, let her hear it. Roland Pierce believes he holds all the cards. He believes I am the hysterical wife. Cornered and pathetic, he gives me a look of bored pity, then turns his attention to the envelope. He thinks he is about to read a divorce petition bolstered by a falsified psychiatric evaluation. My eyes drift past him to the giant LED screen on the wall of the neighboring skyscraper. It's currently displaying a welcome message for the gala, and in the corner, a digital clock. It reads 8:59 p.m. As Roland's thumb breaks the red wax seal, my mind begins to count. 3. I picture the server, tucked away in a secure data haven, running its final diagnostic. The distribution list is locked the entire board of Northbridge Equity Group, the Securities and Exchange Commission, the FBI's white-collar crime division, and every major news desk in the country. 2. Roland slides the thick stack of papers from the envelope. He clears his throat, adjusting his posture to read, projecting his voice for the audience. He wants them to hear every word of my downfall. 1. The clock on the screen clicks to 9:00 p.m. In my coat pocket, my phone gives a single, silent vibration. The email is sent. The digital bombs have left the bay. Roland Pierce begins to read. Affidavit of Roland Pierce, in cooperation with federal investigation. He stops. His voice cuts off. The silence on the rooftop is deafening, heavier than before. He blinks, his eyes scanning the page frantically. This is not the document he prepared. Go on. Mr. Pierce, I say softly. You wanted to read it. Please, continue. His face, usually so tan and confident, turns a pale, sickly white. He looks up at Grayson, utterly lost. What is it? Grayson hisses, his mask of charm cracking. Read the damn thing. Roland's hand is visibly shaking. He looks at me, and for the first time, he sees me. He sees the trap, and he knows he is standing right in the center of it. He stammers. I take the champagne flute from a passing waiter's tray. He seems to be having trouble. Let me help. I step closer, looking at the header. Yes. Regarding the systematic money laundering practices of Grayson Hale and Northbridge Equity Group, and, this part is my favorite, conspiracy to defraud, embezzle, and the bribery of Dr. Alistair Lennox for the purpose of falsifying medical records. A collective gasp ripples through the crowd. And look, I add, pointing to the last page. Signatures, yours, Roland, and yours, Grayson. That's a lie, Grayson roars, lunging for the papers. But he's too late. At that exact moment, a symphony of notifications begins, a buzz from one table, then another, then a cascade of pings and chimes as every phone on the rooftop lights up. Board members stare at their screens, their faces hardening. Journalists' eyes go wide as they read the email alert, the one attaching this very same document. What is this? A woman with a media badge demands, holding her phone up. I have an email here, an FBI press confirmation. People are backing away from Grayson, physically creating space as if he is diseased. The influencers who were just kissing his ring are now filming his collapse, their faces a mask of performative shock. Grayson looks around, wild-eyed, betrayed. She's lying. She's insane, I told you all. His own phone buzzes on the table beside him. The screen illuminates his furious face. I step up beside him, close enough to read the preview on his lock screen. I take a delicate sip of my champagne. You should get that, darling, I murmur. He looks down. We both read the subject line at the same time. Re-federal investigation. Mr. Hale, we need to talk. 6 months ago, I was a different person. I was the girl from the Midwest who got the fairy tale. I was the one who proved that a middle-class background and a good work ethic could land you in a 3-story glass house overlooking the Bayford Marina. Before I was Mrs. Grayson Hale, I was just Piper Morgan, creative director at Lumen Nest Studio. I was good at my job. I built spaces that felt like people, that breathed. I understood light and texture, how the rough grain of reclaimed wood felt against the cool smoothness of quartz. I had a team. I had a vision. And I was on track to make partner before I turned 30. Then I met Grayson. He wasn't just a man. He was a phenomenon. Everyone said so. The financial magazines called him a once-in-a-generation investment genius. He was tall, obscenely handsome, and possessed a charisma so potent it felt like a physical force. When he focused that attention on me, it was intoxicating. He said he loved my mind, my creativity, my independence, and then, slowly, he asked me to give it all up. "I need you with me, Piper," he'd said, holding my hands in his eyes sincere. "I'm building an empire, and I can't do it if my queen is busy picking out fabrics for someone else's home. Be my partner." So I quit. I gave up Lumen Nest, my colleagues, my future. I became, simply, Mrs. Grayson Hale. My new job was to be perfect, and our life looked perfect. My social media feed was a testament to it. It was a curated gallery of effortless wealth, a visual anesthetic. Here was Piper at brunch, a cascade of artfully blurred mimosas. Here was Piper arranging a vase of impossibly pink peonies. Here was Piper's hand, wedding ring prominent, holding a lit candle from a brand that cost $400. Every post was a quiet, elegant reassurance. Everything is fine. Everything is beautiful. Our house was a marvel of modern architecture, all glass and white marble, a place so sterile it felt like an art installation. Our closets were filled with clothes I'd only ever seen in magazines, items so precious I was almost afraid to wear them. We took whirlwind trips to Europe, 3 days in Paris, 2 in Milan, where we never left the 5-star hotels and the flagship stores. It was a life of breadth, not depth. I told myself I was happy. I told myself this was success. The excuse, at first, was his work. Grayson was the head of Northbridge Equity Group, his own fund, and he was consumed by it. The late nights became all-nighters. "We're closing a huge deal. Babe?" He'd text at 3 a.m. Then came the sudden flights, a trip to Singapore, a meeting in Zurich. He was always just leaving or just landing. I was the dutiful, understanding wife. I'd wait up, the house silent and cold, telling myself that this was the price of ambition. You don't get to be married to a genius without making sacrifices. I was supporting him. I was his partner. The first crack was small, almost invisible. I was looking for a missing shoe under our enormous, custom-built bed when my fingers brushed against something small and hard on the carpet. It was an earring, a single, flawless princess-cut diamond stud, set in platinum. It wasn't mine. My style was warmer, more organic. This was sharp, icy, and incredibly expensive. I held it in the palm of my hand, and the blood drained from my face. That same morning, I had woken up alone again, after Grayson had supposedly come in late from a client dinner. When I rolled over to his side of the bed, his pillow was cold, but it carried a scent that wasn't his, or mine. It was a heavy, complex perfume, sandalwood and bergamot. I stood in our sun-drenched bedroom, the diamond in one hand, the foreign-scented pillowcase in the other. This was the moment to ask the question. I chose not to. I closed my hand around the earring. I told myself a lie, forming the words carefully in my mind. A housekeeper must have dropped it. Maybe it fell from her pocket. It was a stupid, flimsy lie, but it was enough. Because to face the truth meant admitting that my entire life, the career I'd sacrificed, the friends I'd drifted from, the person I'd become was built on a catastrophic mistake. It was easier to believe in a clumsy housekeeper than a lying husband. I threw the earring in the trash. I stripped the bed and washed the linens myself, using extra bleach. I learned to live with the reflections. We'd be at those interminable client dinners, seated in dark restaurants with red upholstery. I'd be there, the smiling, silent wife, nodding as Grayson's partners talked about leveraged buyouts. I'd refill their wine glasses, laugh at their terrible jokes, and across the table, Grayson would have his phone in his lap, angled away from me, but I could see the screen. I could see it reflected in the curve of my wine glass. I could see the blue and gray bubbles of a text conversation. I could see him smile, a small, private smile that was never meant for me. I would just stare into my glass, watching the tiny, silent betrayal, and take another sip. I never said a word. The first time he drew the knife, it wasn't a secret. It was right in public. We were at another fundraiser, and I had, apparently, laughed too loudly at a story one of the other wives was telling. On the car ride home, the silence in the Bentley was thick and suffocating. "What was that tonight?" he finally said, his voice flat. "What was what?" "Your behavior." He didn't look at me, just stared out at the city lights blurring past. "You were loud. You were sloppy. I need you to look better than that. Piper, you're embarrassing me in front of my investors." I stared at his profile, stunned. "I was just talking to Sarah about her kids. It doesn't matter." He turned to me then, his eyes as cold and hard as the glass of our house. "It looked unstable. You looked emotional. I need you to control your emotions. Fix it." That was the first time he used the word. Unstable. It wasn't an accusation. It was a diagnosis. And it was a command. Fix it. As if my feelings were a faulty piece of machinery. That was the first cut. The one that went right into my self-worth. And it was cleaner than any scalpel. After that, the insomnia started. I'd lie awake, staring at the ceiling, my heart pounding with a nameless anxiety. I started drinking more coffee, needing the caffeine to paste the perfect smile on my face, to get through the empty days. My social media posts became less frequent. The bright pictures of parties and brunches felt like a mockery. I switched to artful shots of black coffee, taken at 2 a.m, with a simple, safe caption, "Just tired." The perfect wife was starting to glitch. The cracks were showing, and I knew, deep down, he could see them. The end of the old world came on a Tuesday morning. I was in the kitchen, the vast white marble island cold beneath my hands. I was cutting strawberries for his breakfast smoothie, something I still did every morning, a ritual of my old self. My hand was shaking slightly. I hadn't slept more than 2 hours. He walked in, already dressed in a suit, knotting his tie. He didn't kiss me. He just picked up his keys from the counter. "Oh, by the way," he said, as if commenting on the weather, "I hired a temporary assistant to help manage the gala and my personal schedule. Her name is Nova Clark." He pulled his tie tight, a sharp, final gesture. "You'll like her," he said, finally looking at me, his eyes empty of any affection. "She has great taste." Nova Clark did not walk into our home. She colonized it. She arrived on a Thursday, not for an interview, but for an integration. She was 26 years old, with hair so platinum it looked white, and the effortless, bored confidence of someone who is paid to be looked at. She wore black leather pants and a silk blouse, looking less like a temporary assistant and more like the lead in a high-budget thriller. She was, I realized with a sickening jolt, the living embodiment of the sandalwood and bergamot perfume. She strolled through the living room, a space I had spent months designing, her eyes scanning the neutral tones, the soft textures, the warm woods I'd used to counteract the home's cold, glass and steel architecture. "It's cute," Nova said, tapping a perfectly manicured nail against her teeth. Her gaze dismissed my work, my taste, my entire existence in one syllable. "But a little dated, don't you think, for Mr. Hale?" She looked at me, her smile not reaching her eyes. "He's such a bold personality. He really deserves something with more of an edge." I just smiled, the motion feeling stiff and unfamiliar on my face. I was being critiqued on my own turf, in my own home, by a woman half my age who was ostensibly here to file Grayson's expenses. Within a week, she was running the house. I found her perched on the marble kitchen island one morning, laptop open, sipping a latte our housekeeper had made for her. I was still waiting for my own coffee. "Morning, Piper," she chirped, not looking up. "I'm just mapping out the vendor list for Grayson's 40th birthday party. We're thinking Midnight Empire for the theme. Very bold. Very him. We're thinking." She spoke of my husband's landmark birthday, a party I should have been planning, as if it were her own wedding. She discussed caterers, pyrotechnics for the rooftop, and a guest list that she was trimming for better optics. I stood there, invisible in my own kitchen, listening to this 26-year-old stranger design my husband's life, my life. Then, the small incidents began. I'd pick up my phone, and the password, a 6-digit code I had used every day for 5 years, would suddenly be incorrect. "That's strange," I'd murmur, trying again, only to be locked out. I'd go to a lunch reservation I was certain I had made, only for the maitre d' to look at me with pity. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Hale, your booking is for next Wednesday. I lost my car keys. Not just misplaced them, they vanished. I found them 3 days later in the freezer, nestled beside a tray of ice. I had no memory of putting them there. One afternoon, I was driving home from the grocery store, a route I had taken 1,000 times, and I suddenly blanked. The street names looked foreign. The houses were unrecognizable. I had to pull over, my heart hammering against my ribs, and plug my own address into the car's GPS. I sat there for 10 minutes, gripping the steering wheel, terrified. Grayson, of course, noticed everything. He wasn't angry, which was worse. He was concerned, in that cold, clinical way of his. "You're getting so spacey, Piper," he said one night, after I'd forgotten we had dinner plans with his partners. I was still in my yoga clothes when they rang the doorbell. "I'm just tired," I insisted, my face burning with humiliation. "I've been sleeping badly." "You're more than tired," he countered, his voice gentle, which was always a warning. "You're fragile. I'm genuinely worried about you." He started using those words constantly, like labels, especially in front of others. "Be gentle with Piper. She's very fragile right now. Piper's a bit spacey today. You'll have to forgive her." He was building a narrative. He was collecting evidence. "You know," he said one evening, watching me search frantically for my phone, which was sitting right in my hand, "maybe I should have someone check on your mental health. Just a baseline, for my own peace of mind." The fog in my brain grew thicker. It felt physical, like cotton wool packed behind my eyes. I'd have these moments, these blackouts. They weren't like fainting, they were just missing time. Seconds, sometimes minutes, would just vanish. I noticed it most often in the mornings. Grayson, in a sudden show of domesticity, had insisted on making my coffee himself. "You're so stressed, babe," he'd said, handing me the mug. "Let me take care of you." It always tasted slightly, strangely sweet. Though I took it black, I'd drink it, and an hour later, I'd find myself standing in the bedroom, having no idea why I'd walked in there. I found notes on my phone I didn't remember writing, call the bank about the red flag. "He knows you know." The same thing happened at night. Nova would be at the house, working late with Grayson, and she'd fix me a cocktail. "You look tense. Piper, have a gin and tonic." I'd drink it, and the rest of the evening would blur at the edges. The climax of their campaign happened at a dinner for the hospital board. We were at a restaurant, seated at a long table with 10 other people. I was holding a glass of red wine. Nova, who was there to take notes for Grayson, had been the one to hand it to me. One of the investors, a man named Marcus Thorne, was telling a story. I went to take a sip of wine, and my hand, it just jerked. It was a violent, uncontrollable spasm. The glass tilted, and red wine washed all over the front of his crisp, white, $1,000 shirt. The table went silent. All eyes were on me. I felt a dizzy, sickening wave of confusion, the room seeming to tilt. "Oh my God," I gasped, but the words felt thick, slurred. I tried to stand up to help him, but I stumbled, knocking my chair backward with a loud clatter. Grayson was on his feet instantly. I am so sorry. Marcus, please, forgive my wife. He grabbed my arm, his fingers digging into my bicep like claws. She's not herself tonight. He dragged me out of the dining room, hissing into my ear. What the hell is wrong with you? I don't know, I stammered, tears of genuine confusion and shame welling in my eyes. It just slipped. I'm so sorry. He shoved me into the back of the car, his face a mask of cold fury. Did you forget your meds again? He snapped. I told you what the doctor said. You have to take them. The world stopped. What doctor? I whispered, the streetlights outside streaking past. Grayson. What doctor? I haven't been to a doctor. He just stared at me, his expression unreadable in the dark. I already spoke to him, he said, his voice flat. He's very concerned, and so am I. When we got home, I didn't cry. I ran to the master bathroom, my mind racing. What doctor? What medicine? He was lying. He had to be. I tore open our medicine cabinet, a mirrored vault filled with his expensive shaving creams and my untouched moisturizers. And there, tucked behind a bottle of aspirin, was a new bottle. An amber-colored prescription vial. My name was on the label. Piper Morgan. The prescription was for generalized anxiety. The doctor's name was Alistair Lennox, a name I had never heard. The issuing pharmacy was Harborview Wellness Center, a place I had never been. I stood there, holding the bottle, the small white pills rattling inside. This was proof. But proof of what? That I was sick, or that I was being framed. There you are. I jumped, the bottle slipping in my hand. Nova was standing in the bathroom doorway, leaning against the frame. She was wearing one of Grayson's silk robes. She smiled, a sweet, sympathetic smile that made my skin crawl. Her eyes flicked to the bottle in my hand. Oh, Piper, she said, her voice dripping with faux concern. You really need to take those. Mr. Hale is so worried about you. She took a step into the bathroom, the scent of sandalwood and bergamot filling the small space, choking me. He's under so much pressure with the gala and the fund, she continued, her voice hardening just slightly. The last thing he needs is you falling apart. She looked me straight in the eyes, the sweetness gone, replaced by a cold, clear warning. Don't disappoint him. She turned and left, the silk robe whispering against the marble floor. I stood there for a long time, the pills rattling in my hand. I looked at my reflection in the mirror. My eyes were wide, my face pale. I looked, to all intents and purposes, like the fragile and unstable woman they were describing. I lay in bed that night, the house silent, Grayson sleeping in one of the guest rooms, as he often did. I stared at the ceiling, my mind finally, terribly clear. If they tell you you're crazy for long enough, will you eventually break? If they medicate you, isolate you, and strip you of your own reality, will you just disappear? I felt a tear slide, hot and angry, down my temple and into my hair. But it wasn't a tear of sadness, it was a tear of rage. For the first time in months, I didn't feel confused. I felt cold, and in that cold, something hard and sharp began to form. They thought they were pushing me over the edge. They didn't realize they were pushing me toward a fight. The morning after Nova's threat, the fog began to clear, replaced by a cold, sharp-edged resolve. Grayson was in a rush, late for a meeting at the fund. "Babe, I made your coffee," he called out, his voice already halfway out the door. "It's on the counter." I walked into the kitchen. There it sat, in my favorite ceramic mug, steaming and smelling faintly, sickeningly sweet, the daily dose of my own erasure. I picked it up, my hand steady. I walked to the deep steel sink, looked at the dark liquid, and poured every last drop down the drain. I turned on the faucet, washing away the evidence. I made myself a new cup, from a new bag of beans, with water from the tap. I drank it standing by the window. Within an hour, the world snapped into focus. The cotton wool behind my eyes receded. The edges of the room were sharp. My thoughts, usually so slippery and vague, felt linear and strong. I wasn't just tired, I was being poisoned. That day, I resurrected the old Piper. I took a cab to a nondescript office building downtown and rented a private mailbox under my maiden name. Then I went to a small electronics store and bought a brand new, unregistered burner phone. My last stop was the public library, using their computer. I logged into an old dormant bank account from my Lumennest days, one Grayson had never bothered to ask about. I ordered the most comprehensive at-home drug testing kit money could buy, the kind that could detect a wide spectrum of substances in liquids and solids. I had it shipped to the new mailbox. I went home, and I began my new life as a scientist. I started a meticulous log on an old encrypted laptop I'd kept in a storage box from my studio days. Grayson had never even seen it. My journal wasn't about feelings. It was about data. 9:05 a.m. Drank coffee prepared by Grayson. Taste overly sweet. Sensation within 45 minutes. Felt disoriented. Spacey and nauseous. Short-term memory impaired. 7:30 p.m. Nova prepared a gin and tonic. Drank half. Sensation dizziness. Slurring of words. Emotional volatility. Blackout period of approximately 20 minutes. I bought a set of tiny sterile vials online. I began to collect samples. A few drops of the morning coffee, siphoned off before I dumped it. A sample of the gin from the bottle Nova always used. I even palmed one of the small white pills from the prescription bottle, the one with my name on it, and replaced it with a baby aspirin of the same size. When the test kit arrived, I locked myself in the guest bathroom. I carefully prepared the samples, the coffee, the gin, the crushed pill. I laid out the test strips, my heart pounding a hole in my chest. I didn't have to wait long. The results were immediate, and they were undeniable. The coffee and the gin both lit up for a high concentration of benzodiazepine, a powerful, fast-acting sedative. The pill from the bottle was the same, just a much higher, purer dose. They weren't just trying to calm me down. They were systematically drugging me, keeping me in a constant, pliable state of confusion and emotional imbalance. They were making me fragile. They were building their unstable wife from scratch. I photographed the test results, timestamped them, and uploaded them to my secure drive. I photographed the prescription bottle, the doctor's name, the pharmacy, the refill date. I was no longer a victim. I was a prosecutor building her case. The next step was harder. I needed to know the why, the how. I needed into Grayson's world. He was arrogant. That was his greatest weakness, and it was my greatest weapon. He was careless with his personal iPad, the one he used for private browsing. Separate from his official Northbridge devices, he left it on his nightstand, and it was locked with his thumbprint. I waited until 2 a.m. I'd made him a warm milk with honey before bed. Assuring him I was feeling much better, he was in a deep, oblivious sleep. I slipped out of bed, my feet silent on the cold marble floor. I stood over him, his handsome face slack in the moonlight. I took his hand. It felt heavy and warm. My stomach churned, but I pushed the feeling down. I gently, precisely, pressed his thumb to the home button. The screen clicked open. I took the iPad to the bathroom, locked the door, and sat on the floor, the cold tile seeping through my pajamas. I opened his email, and the entire, rotting, toxic truth spilled out. It was all there, a dedicated, private email chain between Grayson, Nova Clark, and a Dr. Alistair Lennox from the Harborview Wellness Center. Grayson to Lennox. She's getting worse. Had another episode last night. Crying. Incoherent. I'm worried she's a danger to herself. We need to accelerate the timeline. Lennox to Grayson. Understood. I am updating her file with your reports. Based on the pattern of behavior you've described, I can file a petition for an emergency psychiatric evaluation. Once she is under my care, I can make the official capacity assessment. Capacity assessment. The words hit me like a punch. I kept digging, my blood turning to ice. I found the attachment. It was a scanned draft of a legal document. It wasn't just a divorce filing. It was a petition to have me declared mentally incompetent. It was full of lies, page after page of them. Ms. Morgan's history of self-harm, her delusional episodes, her inability to manage her own financial affairs. It was a legal execution. Our prenuptial agreement was ironclad. Unless one of us was deemed incapacitated, in that event, all assets would be placed into a protective trust, to be managed by the healthy spouse, by Grayson. He wasn't just trying to divorce me. He was trying to erase me and steal my settlement. I felt like I was going to be sick, but I forced myself to keep going. I found the emails from Nova. Her involvement wasn't just personal, it was financial. My fingers flew, opening attachments, following the trail. They were moving money, his money, my money, the fund's money, huge, multi-million-dollar transfers from Northbridge Equity Group to a series of opaque shell companies with names like NC Holdings and Bayford Legacy Trust. Nova was directing the traffic. I found the one message that sealed their fates. Nova to Grayson. If she ever gets a lawyer smart enough to see these transfers, we're both finished. But don't worry, by the time she figures anything out, she'll be safe and sound in a nice padded room, and her signature won't be worth a damn. My breath hitched. I scrolled down. A new message had come in just an hour ago. Nova to Grayson. His 40th will be the perfect night for the announcement. I've already confirmed the press list. I want the whole world to watch her fall apart when she's served. So, that was the plan. A public humiliation. Serve the crazy wife with divorce papers and a psychiatric hold at his own birthday party. A perfect tragic story for the press. The noble, suffering husband finally forced to save his unstable wife from herself. My hands were shaking, but not from fear. It was with a rage so cold and pure it felt like a new power source. Methodically, I began my work. I created a new, anonymous email account, one by one. I forwarded every single email, every fabricated medical report from Dr. Lennox, every illegal bank transfer, every shell company document, every loving conspiratorial message between Grayson and Nova. I sent it all to my new, secret inbox. I then went into his sent folder and deleted the evidence of my forwarding. I cleared his browser cache, his trash folder, and ran a utility to wipe the free space. I logged out of all accounts. I placed the iPad back on the nightstand, exactly at the angle he had left it. He would wake up in the morning and never know I'd been there. I walked downstairs to the kitchen. The moon was high, casting long, geometric shadows across the white marble. I opened the pantry and took out the bag of organic cane sugar that Grayson so thoughtfully used in my coffee every morning. I walked to the sink, opened the bag, and poured the entire thing down the garbage disposal. I watched the white crystals pile up, a sweet mountain of poison. I turned on the water, then flipped the switch. The motor roared to life, a savage, grinding sound that filled the silent house. It was the sound of my old life, the sweet, accommodating, fragile life, being pulverized. From now on, I whispered to the empty moonlit room, the coffee will be bitter, but my mind will be clear. The first call I made from my new burner phone was to a name I'd found in an article about the most brutal high-asset divorces in the state, Marisol Vega. Her firm, Vega, Cole, and Rowan, was legendary. The article had described her as having the smile of a knight and the claws of a shark. I needed the shark. Her office was not what I expected. It wasn't the cold, sterile glass box Grayson favored. It was on the top floor of a historic brick building, filled with dark wood, old books, and modern art that looked angry and expensive. Marisol Vega herself was immaculate. She wore a sharp, cream-colored suit, her dark hair pulled back into a severe bun. She didn't offer me coffee or water. She just sat behind a massive mahogany desk, gestured for me to sit, and waited. "You have 30 minutes to convince me to take your case, Mrs. Hale," she said, her voice smooth and low. My paralegal said it was urgent. My hands were shaking. I had rehearsed this. I placed my old, encrypted laptop on her desk. "What I have," I said, my voice trembling slightly, is my husband, Grayson Hale, systematically drugging me for months to simulate a mental breakdown. Her expression didn't change, but her eyes sharpened. That's a severe accusation. I have proof, I said. I opened the laptop and turned it to face her. I have the results from at-home drug tests on the coffee he prepares, the cocktails his assistant gives me, and the pills from a fraudulent prescription he had filled in my name, all positive for benzodiazepines. I clicked to the next file. I also have emails, a lot of them. For the next 20 minutes, I didn't stop talking. I showed her everything, the email chain with Dr. Lennox, the plan to have me evaluated and committed to Harborview, the draft of the petition to have me declared incompetent, citing a history of self-harm that was a complete fabrication. I told her about the prenup and the clause that would give Grayson control of everything if I was incapacitated. When I finished, I was breathing hard, the adrenaline that had kept me going now leaving me shaking. Marisol watched me, her face unreadable. She steepled her fingers. You've been through a horrific ordeal, Mrs. Hale, the drugging, the gaslighting. It's criminal abuse. We can file for divorce on those grounds immediately. We can get you out, secure your assets, and get a restraining order. She paused, tilting her head. So, I'll ask you one question. Is that what you want? Do you just want to get out, or do you want him to pay? I looked at this powerful woman, the first person who hadn't looked at me like I was crazy. The tremor in my hands stopped. I want him to lose everything he tried to take from me, I said, my voice quiet, but as cold and hard as the marble in my kitchen. He tried to take my money, my reputation, and my sanity. I want to take it all back, and I want him to know, as he's watching it all burn, that I was the one holding the match. A slow, terrifying smile spread across Marisol Vega's face. It was the shark. Good, she said. In that case, we have a lot more work to do, and you're going to need to meet my partner. She picked up her desk phone. Caleb, can you come in here? I have someone I want you to meet. The man who walked in was the complete opposite of Marisol. Caleb Rowan was maybe 50, with a slightly rumpled suit, thinning hair, and the gentle, unassuming face of a high school history teacher. He looked like he'd be more comfortable talking about the Civil War than high-stakes finance. Piper, this is Caleb, Marisol said. He's our in-house investigator. He used to be a forensic accountant for the Financial Crimes Division of the police. Caleb, this is Piper Hale. Her husband is Grayson Hale of Northbridge Equity. Caleb nodded pleasantly. Mr. Hale, big name, big returns. Mr. Hale is also running a systematic campaign to drug his wife, have her illegally committed, and steal her settlement, Marisol said flatly. But Piper believes that's just the cover story. She found some interesting financial correspondence. I turned the laptop to Caleb. I opened the emails from Nova, the ones about the shell companies and the money transfers. Caleb pulled up a chair. He read, his pleasant expression slowly fading, replaced by an intense, focused curiosity. He scrolled through the attachments, his eyes moving fast. He was quiet for almost 5 minutes. Finally, he pushed his glasses up his nose and looked at me. Mrs. Hale, these emails are very, very stupid on their part, but they're a beautiful gift to us. He pointed to one of the transfer logs. They aren't just hiding assets from you. They're laundering. This isn't divorce. This is federal. He leaned back, a small, excited smile playing on his lips. If this is just the tip of the iceberg, this is going to be fun. Over the next 3 weeks, Caleb Rowan disappeared down the rabbit hole, while I continued my performance at home, the spacey wife, forgetting things, acting confused, all while documenting every move they made. Caleb was tearing Grayson's financial empire apart from the inside out. He uncovered the truth. Northbridge Equity Group was a front. A significant portion of it was a sophisticated money laundering operation for a shadow network of offshore clients. Grayson was taking their dirty money, running it through his high-yield fund, and taking a massive percentage. The shell companies Nova was managing were where he skimmed his share. He had created something called the Hale Legacy Fund, a fictitious trust, as the final destination for the stolen money he intended to disappear with once I was taken care of. Armed with this, I knew I had one more ally to secure, the most dangerous one. I requested a meeting with my mother-in-law, Eleanor Hale. Eleanor was the matriarch of the Hale dynasty, a cold, elegant widow who lived in a pre-war fortress on the wealthiest street in Bayford. She had never approved of me. I was the Midwest girl, the decorator. I wasn't from old money. I didn't have the right bloodline. To her, I was just a provincial girl who had gotten lucky. I met her in her drawing room, a place so quiet and heavy with antique furniture it felt like a tomb. She didn't offer me tea. "Piper," she said, her voice like dry ice, "I assume you're here to complain about Grayson. I'll stop you right now. I don't involve myself in marital spats. You got the ring. It's your job to keep him. If you can't—" She shrugged, a tiny, dismissive gesture. "That's your failure, not mine." "This isn't a spat, Eleanor," I said, my voice steady. I placed a single file on the polished table between us. "This is a federal indictment waiting to happen." She raised a perfectly sculpted eyebrow. "Don't be dramatic." "Your son is laundering money through Northbridge," I said. "He's stealing from his investors, and he's conspiring with a fraudulent doctor to have me illegally committed to a mental hospital so he can steal my settlement." She laughed, a short, sharp, ugly sound. "You're delusional. Grayson told me you were becoming unstable." "Am I?" I slid a photograph across the table. It was a still from one of the nanny cams I'd hidden. It showed Grayson and Nova in our kitchen, kissing. And this, I slid another, a screenshot of the bank transfer from Northbridge to NC Holdings, and another, the email from Dr. Lennox detailing the plan to petition for my emergency evaluation. Eleanor's face went white. She picked up the email, her hand shaking with a fury that dwarfed mine. She read it, then she read it again. The scorn in her eyes vanished, replaced by a cold, reptilian ruthlessness. She wasn't seeing a daughter-in-law in pain. She was seeing a front-page scandal. She was seeing the name Hale dragged through the mud by the Department of Justice. "The fool," she whispered, her voice shaking with rage. "The absolute, idiotic fool. He's going to pull the entire Hale name down with him." She looked up at me, her eyes no longer contemptuous, but calculating. "What do you want from me?" "Not money," I said. "I want your silence. I want you to do nothing. I want you to attend his birthday party and act as if everything is perfect. And when I ask, you're going to make 2 phone calls, one to the chairman of the board and one to your friend at the Attorney General's office. You're going to tell them you just received some disturbing information and that you, as the family matriarch, are cooperating fully with any investigation." She stared at me. She was seeing, for the first time, who I really was. Not the decorator. "You do this," I said, "and the Hale name survives. You'll be the one who cleaned house. You'll be the savior. He'll be the aberration." Eleanor Hale slowly nodded. "He was always weak," she said. It wasn't an apology. It was a verdict. She agreed. Not to save me, but to save the brand. I walked out of her fortress and called Marisol. "Eleanor is on board." "Good." Marisol's voice was grimly satisfied. "Because I'm drafting the real divorce petition. We're filing first. We're not just asking for your settlement. We're asking for damages for criminal endangerment and conspiracy. And Caleb has a friend, a very quiet, very ambitious agent at the FBI's Bayford field office. We're having a little chat with him tomorrow. We're going to give him your husband, wrapped in a bow." Once I had my team, the real performance began. I was no longer a victim. I was an actress, and I was playing the role of my life, the unstable wife. My performance had to be flawless, because my audience, Grayson and Nova, was captive and critical. I began to lean into the character they had written for me. I would walk into a room and stop, as if I'd forgotten why I was there. I accidentally missed a lunch with one of his most important investors. calling Grayson in a panic 2 hours later, claiming I thought it was next Tuesday. "Piper, it's on the calendar," he'd say, his voice a perfect blend of exasperation and pity. "We talked about it this morning. Don't you remember?" I don't," I'd whisper, letting my voice crack. I started talking about the sounds. "Grayson," I'd say over dinner, pushing my food around the plate. "Do you ever hear whispering in the vents? It sounds like water." He would just look at me, his mask of concern solidifying. "There's no whispering, Piper. It's just the air conditioning." "No," I'd insist, looking past him. "It's definitely whispering." Every time he used one of his key phrases, "You're being irrational. You're too emotional to think clearly. This is why you need treatment." I would nod, look defeated, and then retreat to my laptop and log the exact time, date, and phrasing in a file for Marisol. I was giving him the evidence he thought he needed, while I was collecting the evidence that would actually matter. In the mornings, I started taking my medicine in front of him. I'd found a bottle of vitamin B12 supplements that were small, white, and nearly identical to the benzodiazepine pills. I swapped them into the prescription bottle. Now, when he handed me my coffee, I would dutifully shake one of the vitamins into my palm and swallow it with a glass of water, all under his watchful, satisfied gaze. "See," I'd say, "I'm trying. I really am." Then I'd pour his drugged coffee down the sink the moment he left for the office, while I played the fragile doll at home. The old Piper, the creative director, was managing a complex project. I liquidated the private savings account I'd kept from my Luminess days, a little over $80,000, and, in a series of small, untraceable transfers, moved it all to a new account I'd opened in Ohio under my mother's maiden name. It was my escape fund, my just-in-case card. Meanwhile, Caleb was pulling on the threads of Dr. Lennox, and he found something truly chilling. This wasn't Lennox's first time. Caleb unearthed 2 other cases in the last 5 years, both involving wealthy, powerful men and female relatives: a sister, an aunt who had suddenly been declared incapacitated and had their assets signed over to trusts managed by Dr. Lennox and their respective male guardians. "This isn't just about your divorce, Piper," Caleb told me in Marisol's office. "Your husband and his doctor are running a cottage industry. They find inconvenient, wealthy women and make them disappear. Legally and medically, you're just the latest client." This changed everything. It wasn't just my fight anymore. Marisol took this new information to her contact at the FBI. The agent, a sharp, ambitious woman named Kira Dunn, saw the bigger picture immediately. This wasn't a domestic squabble. This was a multi-victim conspiracy and RICO case. Marisol, ever the shark, cut the deal. "The agent wants to move now," Marisol explained to me, her face grim. "She wants to raid Harborview Wellness and Northbridge, but I told her no." "You told the FBI no." "I told her they get one shot at this," Marisol said. "If they move now, Grayson will lock everything down, and Dr. Lennox will shred his files. I told her we have a better way, a public execution, staged by the victim herself. Grayson's 40th birthday party." The FBI agreed to the terms. They would provide silent, undercover surveillance. They would have agents, including Agent Dunn, present at the party, posing as guests and staff, but they would not move. They would not make a single arrest until I, Piper Morgan, gave the signal. In exchange for this high-risk, high-reward public staging, I would hand them the entire unadulterated case: the drugging, the medical fraud, the money laundering, and the other victims Caleb was now actively tracking down. They would get Grayson Hale, Dr. Alistair Lennox, and a network of white-collar criminals, all at once. The deal was done. The stage was set. Now, I just needed the final, undeniable proof. I went online and, using my burner phone and a public Wi-Fi signal, I ordered 2 microcameras, the kind designed to be hidden in plain sight. The first one was easy. I tucked it into the base of a heavy, ornate bronze candle holder that sat on the console table in the hallway, giving it a perfect wide-angle view of the living room and the kitchen entrance. The second one was my masterpiece, I carefully dismantled the high-end espresso machine Grayson and Nova loved so much. It took me 2 hours, following a tutorial on my burner phone, but I managed to embed the second camera lens just beneath the power indicator light. It had a perfect close-up view of the kitchen island, the place where they stood, where they whispered, where they kissed. I didn't have to wait long. It was a Thursday night, 2 weeks before the party. Grayson had come home early. I was in bed, supposedly suffering from a migraine. The cameras, streaming to my secure laptop, showed Grayson pouring 2 glasses of wine. Nova walked in, wearing only one of his dress shirts. She walked straight to him and kissed him, a long, deep, proprietary kiss that told me everything I already knew. They leaned against the island, sipping their wine, directly in front of the espresso machine. "She's getting worse," Grayson said, his voice casual. "She told me she's hearing the vents whisper to her." Nova laughed, a high, tinkling sound. "My God, you're a genius. That pill and coffee combination is working better than I thought. She's completely losing it." "It's not just the pills," Grayson said, and my blood ran cold. I had Lennox up the dosage. I told him I needed her fully compliant before the party. He took a sip of wine. "He's getting the final court order ready for Roland to bring over that night. It'll be so clean. He serves her. She has a complete psychotic break in front of everyone, and Dr. Lennox, who will be there as a guest, can step in and have her humanely escorted to Harborview." "And then," Nova purred, tracing the lapel of his shirt. "And then," he said, kissing her again, "after she's institutionalized and her signature is worthless, we sell this house, we liquidate everything, we move to Malibu, and you never have to pretend to be an assistant again." My hands were clamped over my mouth to keep from screaming. I had it. I had his confession, the conspiracy, the drugging, the intent, all of it, in high-definition video. I needed to give them the finale. I needed to deliver my breakdown on a silver platter. The next night, I waited until Grayson was in his home office. I walked into the living room, directly in front of the hallway camera. I woke up from a nap on the sofa, my eyes wide with terror. "No," I whimpered, backing into the center of the room. "No, it's not supposed to. It's not." Grayson heard me and came to the doorway, his phone in his hand, as I knew he would. "Piper, what's wrong now?" I pointed, my hand shaking violently, at the ceiling. "The water," I choked out, tears streaming down my face. "Grayson, look, the water. It's flowing backward. It's going up the walls. Make it stop." It was the most convincing performance of my life. I collapsed to my knees, sobbing, completely, utterly insane. Grayson's face was a mask of cold, satisfied triumph. He didn't move to help me. He just raised his phone and hit record. I watched him on my own camera feed, as he filmed my fake breakdown. He stopped recording, put his phone in his pocket, and walked past me, stepping around my crumpled form as if I were a piece of trash. "I'm calling the doctor," he said. I waited until I heard his office door close. I scrambled back to my laptop. My feed showed him sitting at his desk. He forwarded the video he had just taken. The recipient Roland. Pierce Pumv. Law. The message attached to the video was simple. "Case is almost done. Prepare the full package. I want it official on the night of the gala." I saved a copy of the video in his sent email. Now I had him. I had Lennox. And I had Nova. I just needed to lock in the final piece. I called Marisol. "He sent the video to Roland Pierce," I said. "He's looped his lawyer into the conspiracy." "Roland Pierce," Marisol said, and I could hear her smiling through the phone. I was hoping for that. Caleb did a little digging on Mr. Pierce. It turns in, 5 years ago, he was the subject of a quiet little SEC investigation into improper financial advice that made a client's insider trading problem disappear. It was buried, but the FBI can unbury it. One phone call from Agent Dunn, and Mr. Pierce's entire career will be on the line. I looked out the window of my glass prison, at the city of Bayford glittering below. Grayson thought he was the director. He thought he was writing the perfect, tragic ending for his wife. I shut my laptop, the screen reflecting my cold, calm face. I opened my secure timeline file, a document that now contained videos, audio files, bank transfers, and medical reports. I looked at the date for the party, Grayson's 40th. He was writing a tragedy. I was just editing his script into a different genre. It wasn't a drama. It was a true crime story. And the villain was about to get his public unmasking. The preparations for Grayson's 40th birthday party became my full-time job, or rather, pretending to be interested in the party became my job. The real work was happening in the shadows. Nova, in her new, self-appointed role as Lady of the Manor, had chosen the theme Midnight Empire. It was as subtle as she was. The rooftop penthouse was to be draped in black and metallic gold, with oppressive floral arrangements and custom-built glass bars. It was a monument to Grayson's ego, designed to scream invincible. "It's just so strong. You know," she gushed, showing me mock-ups on her iPad. "It captures his power. All black, all gold. Fireworks. It's perfect, Nova," I said, my voice quiet and breathy, the voice of the fragile wife. "It's really a lot." I let a small, overwhelmed tremor enter my words. "I don't think I can handle the big picture right now. It's just so much. Maybe I can just help with the small details." Nova's face was a mask of pity and contempt. "Of course, Piper. You just rest. I'll handle the Empire. You can, I don't know, maybe you can handle the photo presentation, a little trip down memory lane." "Yes," I said, looking down. "I think I could handle that. That would be nice." She patted my arm, a gesture of absolute dominance. "You do that." The guest list was a battlefield. Nova and Grayson were focused on the A-list, the entire board of Northbridge, the biggest institutional investors, a handful of financial journalists who were on Grayson's payroll, a local senator, and a dozen influencers who were being paid to livestream the event. But I had an ally. Eleanor Hale, my cold, calculating mother-in-law, had her own agenda. "Grayson tells me you're having a memory lane corner," she said to me over the phone, her voice clipped. "A charming, if pathetic, idea." "It was Nova's suggestion," I lied. "Of course it was," she sniffed. "While you're gathering photos, I am adding a few names to the guest list, old family friends. Grayson won't recognize them, but they are important." "Important how?" I asked. "One is a senior partner at the largest auditing firm in the state, another is a federal judge from the appellate court, and the third is the editor-in-chief of the Bayford Chronicle, not one of those digital-only rags your husband pays for. They will be my personal guests. They will provide a necessary level of scrutiny." "Thank you, Eleanor," I said. "This is not for you," she snapped. "This is damage control for the family name. Don't speak to me at the party." She hung up. The small details I was handling were, of course, the entire technical infrastructure of the event company Nova had hired. Aurora Events was a shell, or rather, it was a legitimate, high-end production company that Marisol Vega had used for her own daughter's wedding. She'd made one call to the owner, and Aurora Events was suddenly under new management, at least for this one night. I had a 3-hour technical walkthrough with the production manager, a man who, unbeknownst to Nova, was taking his orders directly from Caleb Rowan. "The main LED screen," the manager said, pointing to the 60-foot display, "is slave to our central control booth. But we've also given you this tablet. It's a legacy override, in case you want to run your sentimental slideshow." He handed me a standard-looking iPad. It was anything but. Caleb had configured it. It had one button. This button would override every screen and every speaker on the rooftop. Patching them directly into a secure server Caleb would be running from his videographer setup. "And for your memory lane corner," the manager continued, leading me to a smaller 30-foot screen in a quieter alcove. "We'll have this running the loop of your wedding photos all night. It will be lovely. This was my tribute. I spent a day curating it. I selected 20 photos of Grayson and me from the early days, the smiling, happy, deeply in love couple. Me, looking at him with an adoration that had once been real. It was the perfect camouflage. Anyone who looked at it would see the pathetic, clinging wife, desperately trying to remind her husband of the good times, completely oblivious to the affair he was flaunting with his assistant. It would make his public move to divorce me seem all the more tragic, and my breakdown all the more inevitable. Marisol's FBI contact, Agent Dunn, finalized her own plans. She and another agent would be posing as high-end catering staff, complete with black uniforms and earpieces that would look like part of the service. Caleb, with his press pass identifying him as a freelance videographer for Forbes, would be my eyes on the ground, his camera recording not just the party, but the reactions of the board members. He would also be the one to upload the final presentation to the screens at my signal. The night before the party, I was in my closet, choosing my armor. Grayson had already sent up a dress for me, via Nova. It was a pale lavender, high-necked, long-sleeved creation. It was a dress for an invalid, a child, a ghost. It was designed to make me look washed out, weak, and sexless. I left it in its box. Instead, I pulled out a dress I had bought years ago, before I met Grayson, with my own money from my first big bonus at Lumen Nest. It was a black, backless gown, cut from a heavy silk that clung to every curve. It was the dress of a woman who knew her own power, the kind of dress he had found intoxicating before he decided to break me. It was the dress of the woman he had tried, and failed, to erase. Grayson found me in the walk-in closet, holding the black dress against my body. "What is that?" he asked, his voice sharp with disapproval. "Nova picked out a beautiful dress for you, something appropriate." "I wanted to wear this," I said quietly, letting my eyes fill with a false, pleading nostalgia. You always loved this one, remember? From that night at the gala when we first met." He looked at me, his eyes cold. He was unmoved. "You're not that woman anymore. Piper, just wear the lavender." "Please, Grayson," I whispered. "For your birthday, let me feel pretty, just this one last time." He sighed. A long-suffering, impatient sound. He was so close to his goal. He could afford to indulge the madwoman. "Fine, whatever. It doesn't matter what you wear. You'll be the center of attention anyway." He stepped closer, his demeanor changing, shifting into the concerned husband role he was perfecting for his speech. "Piper," he said, his voice low and serious, "we need to talk. After tomorrow, after the party, things are going to change." I looked up at him, my eyes wide. "What do you mean?" "I mean I'm getting you help, real help. I've spoken to Dr. Lennox. He's concerned, as I am. So, after tomorrow, my lawyer, Roland Pierce, is going to be arranging everything. He's going to help us, transition you into proper care." He was telling me he was having me committed, the night after the party. I summoned the last of my acting ability. I let a single, perfect tear roll down my cheek. "No," I whispered. Not a hospital. Please, Grayson, not that." "It's for the best," he said, his voice hard. "You're not well. You won't have to worry about anything. Roland will handle all the papers." I took a shaky breath. This was the moment. "Okay," I whispered, appearing to shatter. "Okay, Grayson, I won't fight you." His eyes widened slightly, surprised at his easy victory. "I'll sign," I said, my voice breaking. "I'll sign anything. I'm so tired of fighting. I have just one condition." "What?" he asked, suspicious. "Don't do it in a dark room with a doctor. Don't humiliate me like that. If I have to sign, let me do it properly, legally. Let your lawyer, let Mr. Pierce bring the papers to me himself, face to face, as the law requires." Grayson stared at me for a long moment, processing my request. I had handed him the perfect, final validation. His crazy wife was now so defeated. Her only request was for the legality of her own commitment. It was perfect. And even better, it gave him the public forum he and Nova had dreamed of. A slow smile spread across his face. He thought I was handing him the pen to sign my life away. He didn't realize I was handing him the script for his own confession. "Of course," he said, his voice smooth as oil. "You deserve that respect. I'll have Roland bring the full package to the party. We'll get it all signed. Officially, right there. It will be clean. And then you can rest." "Thank you," I whispered. He left the closet, victorious. I heard him on the phone in his office a minute later. His voice was bright, triumphant. "Roland, it's Grayson. Change of plans. She's completely broken. Bring the full package to the party tomorrow night. The works, the divorce, the petition, Lennox's full evaluation. I want it official, on site. It's going to be a night no one ever forgets." I stood in the closet, the black silk cool against my skin. I walked to the floor-to-ceiling window, looking out at the endless, glittering lights of Bayford 60 stories below, his empire, his city. I held up my hand, framing the view in my fingers, and slowly closed my fist, blocking it all out. "You're right, Grayson," I whispered to the empty, darkening penthouse. "Your empire looks most beautiful right before it explodes." The party was scheduled for 8 p.m. At 4, the penthouse was already a hive of frantic, controlled chaos. An army from Aurora Events swarmed the space, unfurling black carpets, erecting golden arches, and checking the wiring on the massive 60-foot LED screen. The Midnight Empire was being built. I sat in the living room, a still point in the hurricane, dressed in simple gray sweats. I was invisible to the crew. I was just part of the furniture, the ghost of the wife who used to live here. At 4:05 p.m., exactly on time, the doorbell chimed. I knew who it was, the building's security, already briefed. "Let him up." Roland Pierce stepped out of the private elevator, all polished shoes, expensive wool, and subtle, predatory cologne. He was the picture of corporate law, a man who charged over $1,000 an hour to make problems disappear. He considered me a problem. He was here to make me disappear. In his hand, he carried a thick, official-looking manila envelope. It was sealed with a red wax crest from the Bayford County Court, the weapon. "Mrs. Hale," he said, his voice flat, devoid of any warmth. He didn't offer condolences. He was here to transact. "Mr. Pierce," I said, gesturing to the sofa. The caterers were setting up a champagne tower 20 feet away, the clinking of glass providing a strange, festive soundtrack to our execution. He did not sit. "I'm sure you understand why I'm here. Grayson, Mr. Hale asked me to handle this personally, as a courtesy to you. He wanted to spare you any public confusion." His eyes were cold. He was looking at me, but he was seeing a checklist: hysterical wife, unstable, non-compliant. "He wants this handled cleanly, before the guests arrive," Roland continued, his patience already wearing thin. He held out the envelope. "Inside, you'll find the divorce petition, as well as a petition for a temporary conservatorship, based on Dr. Lennox's medical evaluation. It's all been filed. This is your copy. All you need to do is sign the acknowledgement of service and the settlement agreement." "Settlement?" I asked, my voice a breathy whisper, just as I'd rehearsed. He almost smiled. "Grayson is being extraordinarily generous. He has agreed to cover all of your medical expenses at Harborview Wellness indefinitely. He was telling me, in polite, legal terms, that my payment for 5 years of my life was a padded room. "Please sit, Mr. Pierce," I said. "Just for a moment," he sighed, annoyed, but sat on the edge of the opposite sofa, on the coffee table between us. I had placed 2 tall glasses of ice water, condensation beating on their sides. I didn't touch either of them. "Mr. Pierce," I said softly, looking at the court-sealed envelope in his hand. "If I sign that document right now, I'm sure your firm will receive a very, very handsome fee from my husband, the final payment for a job well done." "I am simply executing my client's wishes," he said stiffly. "I know." I leaned forward and slid a different envelope across the table. It was plain white, but thicker, heavier, and sealed with simple tape. "But if you open this one, you might get to keep your career," he laughed. A short, sharp, genuine bark of amusement. "Mrs. Hale, I'm not here to play games. You are in no position to negotiate. Dr. Lennox's evaluation is comprehensive. Those videos your husband provided, I've seen them. You're a very sick woman. If you fight this, a judge will see that footage, hear the doctor's testimony, and you will get nothing. You will be declared incompetent. Sign the papers. It's the only sane move you have left." "The videos," I asked. "You mean the one where I saw the water flowing backward?" "Precisely." "And the evaluation, you mean the one you and Grayson discussed on Tuesday? The one where you advised him on the best way to manage the optics of the drugging?" The smile evaporated from Roland's face. His entire body went rigid. "I have no idea what you're talking about. Don't you—" I reached into the pocket of my sweatpants and pulled out my burner phone. I pressed a single button. The audio file was already queued up. It was my voice, or rather, the voice of the crazy woman. "The water. It's flowing backward. Make it stop." Then, a click, a new recording, Grayson's voice, clear as a bell. It worked perfectly. "She's completely broken. She filmed her own breakdown for me." And then, Roland's voice. "Good. But the optics of the medication, that's a liability if she gets the wrong lawyer. We need to frame this as protective, not punitive." Roland Pierce stopped breathing. "And this is my favorite part," I whispered, and let the recording play. Grayson's voice. "She won't. And besides, I still have that old SEC file on you. Roland, you're loyal because you have to be. Just get the papers ready." I hit stop. The silence in the room was absolute, broken only by the distant, cheerful clinking of champagne flutes. Roland's face was a mask of waxy, greenish white. He was looking at a ghost. That's illegal," he stammered. His lawyerly composure shattered. "You can't record me. And you can't conspire to fraudulently commit a woman after covering up her systematic drugging," I countered, my voice no longer the breathy whisper, but the cold, clear tone of my old self. "But the conspiracy to commit medical fraud, that's almost quaint. It's really the SEC problem that's going to ruin you. Grayson's right. You are loyal because you have to be. He's blackmailing you. But the problem with blackmail, Mr. Pierce, is that it only works if the information stays secret, and Grayson isn't the only one who knows." I slid a single piece of paper across the table. It was a printout of a draft email. It was addressed to Marisol Vega. The sender was Agent Kira Dunn of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. The subject line was simple: R.E. Person of Interest, Roland Pierce. Case 05 SEC 881. Roland's eyes scanned the text, his hands shaking so badly he had to grip the table. The email detailed the reopening of a 2018 improper financial advice investigation, the one Grayson had helped him bury. It mentioned that new evidence had come to light in connection with the Hale-Lennox conspiracy that suggested a pattern of criminal behavior. "This is entrapment," he hissed, his voice cracking. "This is blackmail. This is a choice," I said sharply, leaning back. "Right now, Grayson holds your entire career in his hand. He's blackmailing you and setting you up to be the fall guy. When this all breaks, and I promise you, it is all breaking. Tonight, who do you think he's going to sacrifice, the unstable wife he's been protecting? Or the overzealous lawyer who filed the fraudulent papers?" He stared at me, the reality dawning on his face. He was the scapegoat. "What? What do you want?" he whispered. "I want you to open my envelope." His hands fumbled with the tape. He tore it open. Inside, it was not one document, but several, neatly paper-clipped. The first was a pre-drafted cooperation agreement with the FBI. brokered by Marisol Vega. It offered him conditional immunity from my case, the drugging, the conspiracy, the medical fraud in exchange for his full and immediate testimony against Grayson Hale and Dr. Alistair Lennox. The second was a short, handwritten note from Marisol. The SEC charge is still on the table. Roland, cooperate tonight, and I'll make a call to Agent Dunn. Fight us. And she sends this email before you've finished your champagne. Your choice. The third and thickest document was a multi-page affidavit. The title at the top read, Affidavit of Roland T. Pierce. He looked up at me, his eyes hollow. What is this? That, I said, is your new script. Grayson wants you to serve me papers in front of everyone. He wants a show, so we're going to give him one, tonight, at the height of the party. You will walk up to that stage. You will hold that envelope. I pointed to Grayson's envelope on the table. You will break that pretty red seal, and then you will read my affidavit. You want me to confess, he stammered. In public. I want you to become the state's most valuable witness. Live in front of the entire Northbridge Board and the Bayford Chronicle. You will detail the money laundering. You will detail the shell companies. You will detail the conspiracy with Dr. Lennox, and you will confess your part in the plan to have me committed. It's all written down for you. Your only play, Roland, is to be the first rat off the sinking ship, publicly, irrevocably. He was trapped. He looked from Grayson's envelope to mine, a man calculating the blast radius. Grayson would destroy him. The FBI would destroy him. I was the only one offering a door. It was a horrible door, but it was the only one that didn't lead straight to a prison cell. He slumped, the fight draining out of him. He picked up the pen I had placed on the table. He signed the cooperation agreement. Good choice, I said. He stood up, his expensive suit looking suddenly too large for him. He tucked my affidavit into the inside pocket of his jacket. He left Grayson's envelope on the table. No, I said, picking it up. You'll need this, the prop. I handed it to him. His hand was clammy. The performance has to be perfect. Roland, you'll walk up, you'll break this seal, and you'll pull my papers from your jacket. Theatrics matter, for both our sakes. He took the envelope from me. He was holding both now, the weapon Grayson had built to destroy me, and the one I had just handed him to destroy his creator. We didn't shake hands. I'll see you at the party, Mr. Pierce, I said. He turned and walked to the elevator. A dead man in a $3,000 suit. The Midnight Empire was at its peak. Grayson's 40th birthday party was a pulsating mass of ego, wealth, and shimmering gold light, all 60 stories above Bayford. He was on the stage, the king, his hand raised in a toast. Beside him stood Nova Clark, resplendent in a dress of liquid gold sequins, her hand resting possessively on his lower back. She was not the assistant. She was the queen-in-waiting, and everyone knew it. I was standing in the shadows, just as I was supposed to, tucked away near the memory lane alcove. My black dress made me invisible. I was the ghost at the feast. On the 30-foot screen beside me, a loop of our wedding photos played, a silent, sentimental mockery. Me, laughing and looking up at him with such stupid, genuine adoration. It was the perfect backdrop for the narrative of the night the pathetic, delusional wife, clinging to a past her husband had long since escaped. I scanned the faces in the crowd, my allies and my enemies. I saw Eleanor Hale, a pillar of icy silver, watching her son, her face an unreadable mask. I saw the federal judge she had invited, and the editor of the Bayford Chronicle, both looking deeply unimpressed. I saw Caleb, his Forbes press pass dangling, his camera lens aimed not at the stage, but at the faces of the Northbridge board members, who were clustered near the bar, muttering, and I saw Agent Kira Dunn, dressed in the crisp black uniform of a high-end caterer, her earpiece in place, her eyes never leaving the stage. The music faded. Grayson tapped the microphone. "Friends," he began, his voice booming over the speakers, rich with feigned emotion. My board, my family. He paused. A masterful performer. A man's 40th. It's a time for reflection. You look back at your successes and at your challenges. His gaze swept the crowd and landed, deliberately, on me. The spotlight didn't follow, but the attention of 200 people did. You all know, my wife, Piper, has been my rock for so long. His voice was heavy with counterfeit sorrow. But sometimes, the rock crumbles. I've always believed in loyalty, in sickness and in health. But I've also learned that the hardest form of loyalty is knowing when to get someone the help they truly, desperately need, even when they can't see it themselves. A wave of sympathetic murmurs. He was playing them perfectly. I was the burden he had nobly carried, and was now, at his pinnacle, forced to set down. And that, he continued, his voice hardening with resolve, brings us to a difficult, but necessary, moment of clarity. He signaled to the wings. Roland, if you would. On cue, Roland Pierce walked onto the stage. He looked appalling. His face was a waxy, greenish white, and I could see his hands shaking from across the rooftop. He was holding the thick manila envelope, the one with the bright red court seal. Grayson, in his blinding arrogance, mistook his lawyer's terror for the gravity of the occasion. Roland will be handling the legalities, Grayson announced to the crowd. He then turned, his voice dripping with pity, to me. He walked across the stage, a predator closing the distance, and stopped just short of my alcove. Roland followed, a grim-faced attendant. The cameras, the influencers' phones, the live streams, they all swiveled, zooming in on me, the trapped wife, about to be publicly executed. Roland held the envelope out to me, his hand trembling so badly I thought he might drop it. Mrs. Hale, he croaked. I didn't take it. I didn't even look at it. No, I said. My voice was quiet, but in the amplified silence, it carried. Grayson's face tightened. Piper, don't make this harder than it needs to be. I spent the last 6 months trusting things that were handed to me, I said, my voice gaining strength as I took a step forward, into the light. I trusted the coffee my husband made me every morning. I trusted the medication he said I needed. I trusted every piece of paper he put in front of me. I locked eyes with Roland, and then with Grayson. I'm done trusting. If that envelope is from my husband, I want the one man he trusts to open it. I want his lawyer to read it. Read every word. Mr. Pierce, aloud, so everyone in this midnight empire can finally hear the truth. A gasp went through the crowd. This was not the script. Piper, don't be a child, Grayson snapped, his composure cracking. Sign the damn papers. Or what? I shot back. Read it, Mr. Pierce, unless you're afraid of what it says. Roland looked at me. He looked at Grayson. He looked over at the bar, where Agent Dunn was standing, her hand near her hip, watching him. He was a cornered rat, and this was his only escape route. Fine, Grayson roared, furious at the delay. Fine, read it. Read the petition. Read the entire evaluation from Dr. Lennox. Let everyone hear how sick she really is. Roland nodded, his face slick with sweat. He turned back to the crowd. With a dramatic flourish, his shaking hands broke the red wax seal on Grayson's envelope. Theatrics matter. He held the opened envelope. He reached inside, and his hand went straight through, into the inside pocket of his jacket. He pulled out a thick stack of papers. My papers. He held the microphone. I have a document to read. Go on, Grayson urged, a cruel smile returning to his face. The petition. Read it. Roland looked at the first page. This is the affidavit of Roland T. Pierce. Grayson's smile vanished. In cooperation. Roland's voice grew louder, stronger. The panicked rush of a man turning state's witness live on air. In cooperation with the Federal Bureau of Investigation, regarding the multiple ongoing criminal activities of Mr. Grayson Hale. A sound like a cannonball hitting water, a collective, explosive gasp from the crowd. "Roland! What the hell are you doing?" Grayson snarled, moving toward him, but Roland didn't stop. He was reading for his life. Regarding the systematic, multi-year money laundering of offshore assets through the Northbridge Equity Group, via shell corporations including NC Holdings and the Hale Legacy Fund. The board members, I watched their faces collapse. One of them, Henderson, was already backing away, his phone to his ear. And, Roland continued, his voice cracking, regarding the details of a conspiracy with Dr. Alistair Lennox to falsify medical records, to administer controlled substances, specifically benzodiazepines, without consent, for the criminal purpose of having his wife, Piper Morgan, fraudulently declared mentally incompetent. At that exact moment, Caleb hit the switch. The 60-foot Midnight Empire LED screen behind Grayson's head flickered. The looping video of his face vanished, replaced by a high-resolution scan of an email from Nova, Clark Northbridge, com, to Grayson, Hale Northbridge, com, subject transfer. The text detailed the exact movement of $10 million to the Shell Corporation. "This is a lie. He's lying," Nova screamed. Finally understanding, she lunged at Roland, her nails out, trying to rip the affidavit from his hands. A black-clad arm shot out and caught her wrist in a vice grip. "I'd stay right where you are, Ms. Clark," Agent Dunn said, her voice calm and lethal. Grayson snapped. He was no longer a king. He was a rabid animal. He shoved Roland aside, grabbing the sheaf of papers. "Lies!" he roared into the microphone, his face a mask of purple rage. He tore the affidavit in half, showering the stage in the white confetti of his own confession. "She's insane. I have proof. I have the video. She's crazy. I sent it to you. Roland, she's sick." He was screaming, spitting, a man completely undone. He was proving, in front of everyone, that he was the unstable one. "Proof," I said, my voice cutting through his tirade. I looked at Caleb, who had his camera trained on the stage. I nodded once. "He's right," I called out to the horrified, silent crowd. "He does have proof. Let's see it." The LED screen flickered again. It wasn't a document. It was a video feed, the feed from the espresso machine. The rooftop went dead silent. The entire Midnight Empire watched as Grayson, in his own kitchen, pulled Nova into a deep kiss. We heard her laugh. "Working better than I thought. She's completely losing it." And then, Grayson's voice, my husband's voice, amplified, echoing over the stunned city. "It's not just the pills. I had Lennox up the dosage. I need her fully compliant. After she's institutionalized, we sell this house. We liquidate everything. We move to Malibu." The screen changed one last time. The hallway camera. Me, on my knees, sobbing, pointing at the ceiling. The water. It's flowing backward. And then, Grayson, standing over me, his phone out, recording my breakdown. The video ended. The screen went black. No one moved. No one breathed. Agent Dunn let go of Nova. She stepped onto the stage, pulling her badge from her belt and holding it high. "Grayson Hale," she announced, her voice like steel. "You are under arrest for conspiracy to commit wire fraud, money laundering, and aggravated assault." Her partner, the other waiter, was already cuffing a silent, catatonic Nova. "Nova Clark, you are under arrest for the same Dr. Lennox," Dunn called out into the crowd, where the doctor was trying to slip away. "I'd advise you to stay right where you are." Eleanor Hale stood alone, watching her son being cuffed. He looked at her, his eyes pleading. "Mother, do something." She just shook her head, her face carved from ice. "I gave you every chance, Grayson." She turned her back and walked away. He was unhinged, all the charm and polish gone, replaced by the raw, ugly thing underneath. He fought the agents, screaming, his eyes finally finding mine. "Her!" he shrieked, straining against the cuffs. "It was her, Piper, you did this. How did you do this? You're a decorator. You're nothing. You're insane." I walked across the stage. The lights, the cameras, the shocked faces of his entire life, they were all on me. I stopped just feet from him, close enough to see the broken blood vessels in his eyes. I was not crying. I was not screaming. I was, finally, breathing. I leaned in, close enough for his microphone, still live, to catch every word. "I'm not insane. Grayson," I said. "I just stopped drinking the coffee you made me, and I started reading your email." The Midnight Empire dissolved into a flurry of red and blue lights. The opulent black and gold rooftop, built to celebrate a king, had become the crime scene of his downfall. The music was cut, replaced by the calm, authoritative voices of federal agents. The champagne towers and pyrotechnics stood as silent, absurd monuments to an ego that had just been publicly detonated. The guests, the senators, the influencers, the titans of finance were now just witnesses. They were separated, their identities checked, their initial statements taken. The air of celebration had curdled into fear and confusion. I saw Eleanor's guest, the editor of the Bayford Chronicle, dictating furiously into her phone, her eyes alight with the story that would tear the city's financial world apart. Caleb, his Forbes pass now irrelevant, stood with her, helpfully providing context, his transition from videographer to star witness complete. I didn't stay with the crowd. Marisol guided me to one of the poolside cabanas, which Agent Dunn had already commandeered as a makeshift field office. "Ms. Morgan," Agent Dunn said, her face grim but satisfied. She didn't call me Mrs. Hale. We have them all on conspiracy, fraud, and a dozen other charges. But to make this stick, to protect you and the other victims, we need your full data cache, now. It's yours," I said. I pulled the encrypted laptop from the clutch Caleb had been holding for me. I placed it on the table and typed in the 32-character password. "The drive is organized by defendant, Grayson, Nova, Dr. Lennox, Roland. You'll find the complete video file from the espresso machine, all the audio I recorded, the original bank transfer logs I forwarded from his iPad, the results from the at-home drug tests, and my personal journal, detailing every single time I was drugged, with dates, times, and symptoms." Agent Dunn looked at the organized files on the screen, then up at Marisol. "She did our job for the last 6 months. She did it better," Marisol replied, her arms crossed. "Now, about the cooperation agreement for Mr. Pierce." In another corner of the rooftop, Roland Pierce sat at a patio table, his head in his hands, his suit jacket rumpled. An FBI agent stood beside him as he signed page after page of his full, detailed confession, the one Marisol had drafted. He had traded his career, his reputation, and his high-powered firm to avoid sharing a cell with his former client. He had chosen, and he had chosen me. His professional life was over, but he was a free man. As I watched him sign, another figure approached the cabana, Eleanor Hale. She was pale, but her spine was a rod of steel. She dismissed her security detail with a wave. "Piper," she said. It was the first time she had ever used my first name. I stepped out to meet her, the flashing lights reflecting in her cold, diamond earrings. "Eleanor, he's an aberration," she said, not a hint of emotion in her voice. "An idiot. He has tainted the Hale name, but Northbridge, that is a legacy. That is my legacy." "What do you want?" I asked. "A truce. You have your pound of flesh. I need to save the company. If you want any assets left to claim, you will not join the class action lawsuits. You will let me handle the board, the SEC, and the fallout. You will paint this as the rogue act of one corrupt CEO, not the systemic failure of a dynasty." I looked at this woman, who cared more for a brand than her own son. "And in return, she said, "I will not contest your divorce. I will personally guarantee that the Hale family's remaining." Legal funds are not used to fight you. You will get every penny of your settlement, clean and fast. You will get the house. You will get it all. Do we have an understanding? You can have the company, Eleanor, I said. He's all yours. She nodded once, a sharp, reptilian gesture. Good. She turned and walked away, already on the phone, no doubt beginning the long, brutal process of cleaning house. They led Nova away last. Her gold dress looked tarnished in the harsh police lights, her hands cuffed behind her back. She had been so quiet since Agent Dunn had grabbed her wrist. The confidence, the entitlement, the sheer edge she thought she had. It was all gone. She was just a 26-year-old girl who had made a terrible bet and lost. She passed me, and her eyes met mine. They were hollow. She was looking for something pity, perhaps, or a final spark of hatred. I gave her nothing. I felt nothing for her. My fight had never been about her. Not really. She was just a symptom, a tool. My war was with Grayson, and I had won. The law could have what was left. I simply looked away. It was almost 4 a.m. when Marisol's driver dropped me back at the penthouse. The police tape was gone, but the ghost of the party remained a few stray glasses, a gold napkin trampled on the floor. The silence was deafening. For 5 years, this house had been filled with noise, Grayson's booming voice, Nova's high-pitched laugh, the parties, the arguments, the sound of my own quiet, constant anxiety. Now, there was nothing. I walked into the kitchen. The moonlight streamed through the glass walls, illuminating the white marble island, and there, in the corner, sat the espresso machine, the silent, mechanical witness to my husband's confession, the source of the sweet coffee he'd handed me day after day. I stood there for a long time, just looking at it. I thought of the fog. I thought of the whispers in the vents. I thought of him, on camera, saying, I had Lennox up the dosage. I walked over. My hand was steady. I grasped the heavy, stainless steel machine. I unplugged it from the wall. I carried it across the penthouse to the service entrance and opened the trash chute. I held the machine over the dark, 60-story drop. I held all the gaslighting, the pills, the poison, the fragile wife, the unstable woman. I held it all in my hands, and I let go. I didn't hear it land. I went back to the kitchen. I threw the grinder in, the bag of special beans, the milk frother. I scrubbed the counter where it had sat. I was purging my own home. I went to my laptop, my real one. My inbox was a sea of news alerts, all screaming Grayson's name. But at the top, there were 2 emails from Marisol. The first, sent at 9:00 p.m., right as I'd been counting down, it's done. Our petition for divorce on the grounds of criminal endangerment and conspiracy was time-stamped by the court at 9:01 a.m. today. We filed first. Piper, the official narrative is yours. He wasn't divorcing a crazy wife. You were divorcing a criminal. The second email had just arrived. Asset protection is in motion. The FBI has frozen all Northbridge accounts, all shell corporations, and all of Grayson's personal assets. Your settlement is safe. Oh, and Harborview Wellness just had its license suspended by the state medical board. Dr. Lennox is cooperating. All of his evaluations, including yours, are being officially expunged. I closed the laptop. I walked to the sofa, the one facing the wall of glass. I sat down. The silence of the house wrapped around me. I listened. No more voices, no more insults. For the first time in years, the only sound in the room was the soft, steady beat of my own heart. I fell asleep right there, in my black revenge dress. As the sun began to rise over Bayford, I woke up hours later. The sun was high. The house was mine. I went to the purged kitchen, tucked in the back of a storage closet. I found it my old, cheap, $10 drip coffee maker from my apartment, the one I'd used when I was still just Piper Morgan from Lumen Nest. I pulled it out, dusted it off, and found an old, unopened can of cheap coffee. I made a pot. I poured it into a simple mug. It was black. There was no sugar, no poison. No one's hand had touched it but mine. I took a sip. It was bitter, strong, and real. It was the best cup of coffee I had ever tasted. I stood by the window, looking down at the city. It was my city now. I picked up my phone. I opened the camera, switched it to the front-facing lens, and hit record. I looked straight into my own eyes, and I began to speak. My name is Piper Morgan. 6 months ago, my rich husband let his lawyer deliver the divorce papers, thinking he could lock me in a mental hospital and take everything. In return, I let his lawyer open the envelope and read the arrest warrant for Grayson Hale himself. Thank you all so much for listening to my story. Please comment below and let me know where you are listening from. I'd love to connect and share our thoughts. Make sure you subscribe to Zoe Revenge Stories, like this video, and give it extra support by hitting that hype button so this story can be heard by more people.